Hi, my name is Isaac Harrison. I'm a senior at Central Magnet, and I have been drumming for over 12 years now. And so I always knew I wanted to do a thesis that had to do with drumming. I've looked all over the drumming community to find an issue that I could solve. There were several to choose from, but ultimately the goal I sought to achieve was to create a more transportable drum, because drums are quite large. They can take up a lot of space, and especially when transporting drums to different locations, there's a lot of difficulty in having room, making room for other things, and they just take up a lot of space. They're heavy, they're large, they're loud, difficult to maneuver in a lot of situations. So I sought to create a solution to that issue. Now, the community of drummers is a very large community. There are so many different types of drummers, different genres of drummers playing different genres of music. So this is a problem that has been recognized by many drummers before, and those many people have tried to solve this problem. So I had to find research of a way that had not yet been tried to, solve this problem of the difficulty of transporting drums. So I did research and I discovered all these different solutions that other people had taken, and I came upon the conclusion from these that there were about 3 categories that a drum needed to, fulfill to be able to be transportable, to be able to be playable easily, and to have a good sound. And there was not a single solution that met all 3 of these constraints. So I sought to create a solution that would solve all 3 of these, be able to fulfill every single constraint. And that is where I began my research. The first one of these solutions I'd like to talk about is Buffalo Percussion's Solo Tour Kit. Now, this is a drum kit that was made with mostly flat drums, where it was just the head of the drum, and then held onto this huge H-frame that would hold up multiple of these flat drums at a time. It was a full drum kit solution, so instead of just being focused on one drum, it was focused on the entire drum kit. I believe this is the best solution that has been made so far to combat this issue of not being able to transport drums, because it makes it so compact. You can fold it down into this flat pane, which is still quite large. Unfortunately, it's still not the highest transportation ability of any solution, but I think it is probably the best one made so far. It will still take up a large area of space, but it'll be thin instead of a bunch of different drums all spread out into different areas. Now, although this Solo Tour Kit is the best solution, I believe, that has been made so far, it still has its downfalls. Like I was saying before, it's still not the most compact. Even though it is quite compact, it's still not as compact as a drum set could be. So out of the 3 categories of playability, transportation, and sound, it really hits playability and sound very well, because it is set up the exact same way as a drum kit normally is. And it sounds pretty good for something without the acoustics of a normal drum set. The next solution I want to talk about is the box drum, also known as a cajon. This one is one that I personally have, so I'll be able to show it to you. This right here is a box drum. It looks like a box right here, but if you look on the inside, there's a hole right there, and there are some bells that you can see in there, and that gives it a snare sound. Now, these box drums are typically used in a more acoustic setting. Say you're playing in a band, it's usually paired with an acoustic guitar, or maybe a piano or something like that. It's for quiet play. So it's not a solution to drumming all the time. It can really only act as a solution for certain situations where you might need drums, which it's a good thing, yes, but it's not a perfect solution. It's not the best solution out there. These box drums are, somewhat easy to play. They sound okay. They're usually pretty easy to transport. This cajon that I have it came with a backpack that you just stick it in there, zip it up. It's easy to move around. It takes up a good bit of space, unfortunately, still, but it's not as large as a drum set normally is. So out of the 3 categories, it hits all 3 okay. I think the category it hits the best is playability. It's very easy to play. But the sound is not great. The transportation is not great. It's not very portable. It's more portable than others for sure, but still not the most portable. The next 2 solutions I want to talk about are a cocktail drum kit and a jazz drum kit. Now, both of these aren't really as much solutions as the other ones have been. They're more just smaller drum kits. They still have the full-size drums. They still have, you know, these big cymbals, these big stands and everything like that. They don't really combat any of the larger problems of portability. They more just take away some of the drum. Which is usually because of the certain settings that they're being played in. For example, a jazz drum kit would obviously be played in a jazz band. A cocktail drum kit is something that's where you take to like a fancy restaurant to play in a live band that's playing there or something like that. Now these are just, they're not the most portable because they don't really change much about the actual problem. They just take some of the solution away, really. They sound great because, well, they're just regular drums. They sound fantastic, so they hit it really well on that. And then they're just really easy to play for the most part because it's really just the same thing as a drum set, just smaller, I suppose. They don't really try to combat that issue that much. The transportation, the portability of it, it's really just, it's not really there. It's about the same as a regular drum kit. With all this in mind, I wanted to create my own solution to this problem of the portability of drums being so difficult. So I started by taking a drum that I had apart. I removed the rim from the bottom and the top of the drums, removed both drum heads, removed the snare from the bottom. I took all the lugs off of the outside of the snare, and I took the rim and I traced this circle and some sheet metal that I had lying around, and I cut it out, and then I grinded it down to where the edges weren't sharp and to the exact size that I needed it to be. Unfortunately, I had to change this later and switch to a different piece of metal because this one was not thin enough. It would not, or it was too thin, actually. It would not retain its shape well enough for what I needed it to do. I also then had to cut off part of the old snare that I used the parts to create this Thesis. I had to cut it up even more. I had to take part of it off so the head would be able to rest on that. Otherwise, it would not have been able to hold itself together. So I cut that off and sanded it down with an angle grinder, trying to, keep the edges as dull as possible. Wanted to avoid sharp edges. After doing that, I took the second circular shape that I had made and I drilled a bunch of holes in it so that I could then screw on this silicone bowl that I had planned to use for the shell of the drum. I drilled these holes in it so I'd be able to screw it in later. This is the second circular shape that I had made because the first one was too thin. It would not have been able to retain its shape when I was trying to tighten the drum all together to where it would hold itself together. After this, I took it to someone else to have it welded together. I had to weld some cut up pieces of chain on there that I used to attach the drum head to this circular part and thus the shell of the drum itself. I connected all of that using wire that went through the rim of the drum and then through those hooks that were welded on there. After doing all of this, I was pretty much done. I had created the collapsible drum that I had set out to create. Now here it is, right here. It fits all right here. It's not very heavy at all. This round metal plate right here definitely made it a lot heavier than I originally intended, although it was necessary for it to keep its shape. Right here on the bottom, you can see I've got the silicone bowl with this bolt sticking out of it. That's so you can pull it out, expand it like that, and there's the drum right there. Now, I definitely did have some problems when creating this. My original idea was to attach the lugs in place of where these hooks are in this wire, and be able to bolt it on there. But unfortunately, I didn't think that was gonna be able to tighten the drum head on there as well as I wanted it to. Now, this solution that I have now with this wire right here, it also does not tighten the head down near as much as I wish it would. So in future study, that's something that I would definitely recommend, either to myself if I continue to pursue this or to anybody else that wants to pursue this. The materials used could definitely have been a lot better. This silicone bowl was just one that I ordered off of Amazon for 20 bucks. It's not the highest quality, but it works very well for the purpose that I intended for it. The reason it's all nasty on the bottom is because there was a logo that I didn't want to show in this video that I sanded off. Other than that, like, this turned out exactly how I imagined it, aside from the sound. Since this head cannot be tightened down as much as I wish it would be, the sound of it is quite underwhelming. It is very easy to play. It's just a normal drum. It's very easy to move around. It's very easy to use right here with the collapsing of the drum, the pulling out the drum right there. It's simple, not difficult at all. The sound, though, is very not what I intended. So in future study, it would be there would be a lot of importance in trying to accomplish the goal of hitting all three of those categories of the good sound, the portability, and the playability. So here is one final look at this drum right here. Very thin, very flat, not heavy, a little heavy, not much, maybe 5 pounds or so. It's really not that much, not that bulky of an item. Overall, I'd say this was not a complete success, but overall it was pretty good. I could definitely do it better. I just did not have the resources to do so. I'm still not sure exactly how you could tighten the drum head to where it would sound good, but that is a problem for someone else, maybe, or me in the future, who knows. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. That's my collapsible drum.